there's a certain discipline and tenacity, I think, that lies in that. My grandfather was a major, I think, in the Army, but it was in the Middle East, so it has nothing to do with the United States. And something that I learned from him was just the basic principles of discipline, which led to amazing habits, which therefore, built up resilience and what have you. Do you think that being as successful as you are today, that those little tiny things that perhaps you learned, while you were enlisted, and forgive me, I'm not sure if you were in the Army, the Navy, the Marines, but do you think that those little tiny disciplines had created these habits that led to your success? Because you're an incredibly successful person in a myriad of different aspects of life, both professionally and personally, from what I've been able to gather. So that being said, did that have a hand in it at all, or is these these are the things that you learned later on in life?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it had a hand in it. You're kind of reminding me of a statistic I read about earlier this year. Do you know what 75% of all Fortune 500 executives, C-suite and up, all have in common? There's two things that they have in common.
I don't, so I'm going to let you tell me.
Right? So either they were military, or they were martial arts based, or they were both.
That's
right?
Fascinating.
And so, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, yeah, boot camp itself kind of resets the clock for a lot of us. A lot of people go in there undisciplined, immature, don't know what they're doing with life. A lot of people go in the military because it's a fallback strategy, right? They got nothing better to do. Some folks go in with the anticipation they're gonna become admirals one day, or generals in the military. So, I think that it all gets instilled with you day one. I mean, they break you down. They create discipline through routines and rituals that you do every single day. You eat the same way, you sleep the same way, you have the same time clock, everything's regimented. And, boot camps go anywhere between 9 and, let's say, I think 14 or 16 weeks on the high side. And so you do something like that ritually for 9 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. Yeah, you're going to come out on the other side with more discipline, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And that's all it takes, was about 12, 15 weeks?
I think it took that to reset the clock for most people. And then how you carry out of boot camp with those, again, routines and rituals, as long as they become routine and then you stick with that for the next couple of years, yeah, it becomes really, really ingrained and really instilled. I'm not saying everyone does that. I'm not saying that out of boot camp and, mess around for the next 4 or 5 years. But for me, I think that was really what set the tone for me and my career and kind of where I wanted to go. And from there, it was just, how much can I accomplish in the short time I'm in?
I love that. And I think it's that frame of mind that I don't want to say separates, the successful from the unsuccessful, because I think that success in any regard, depending on what your definition of success is, a lot of times always has some form of monetary means because of the foundational principles of what we live in society, right? So societal standards set that the more monetary means that you possess, the more options that you may have. And those options are what allow you and enable us to be able to create different things, right? And I always look at, okay, the more money that you can possibly have, the more that you can create. And if you're if you're a true entrepreneur, I think you're a creator. I think an entrepreneur is there to solve a problem or make something easier or to create something that can do one or a combination of all of those things that I mentioned. I don't know. Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
This is a fun discussion too. I had this discussion last week. I have quite a few friends who have exited companies or have just made a ton of money doing what they do. And I firmly believe money is a tool. You hear this all the time, and it's just going to exacerbate the type of person that you are already. But I don't think, Mo, that most successful people, believe it or not, are chasing money. They're chasing the win, right? They're chasing the next level, whatever that is for them. Like, I think success gets thrown around a lot as my net worth is my success. I mean, that could be one marker of it, but how great of a dad are you? How good of a husband are you? How great of a wife or a cousin or, a best friend? And, are you there for the people that are close to you? And, are you getting better at that every week? Again, money's one tool. You can do a lot of things with it. You can help a lot of people. You can make a lot of progress. And of course, you can build and leverage and create companies off of the backs of money. But the reality of it is, if you're not the person that deserves that money to begin with, it's going to be a short-lived thing. You know, I heard Damon John said this last week. He came to like the local smoothie shop near us, and he said, you realize that 95% of people who are given money, whether it's through a trust or, a lottery or something like that, they're broke within 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, and so what you do with the knowledge and how you are disciplined with the money is really going to create whether or not how much opportunity you can make with it, right?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. And I've seen money transform people for the better, and I've seen them transform them for the worst. I've just found that you know, the moment that I started making, let's call it real money, the more I realized what was important to me and what wasn't important to me. Yeah. And I found that with ultra successful people.
Yeah.
Like one of my best friends is he's 9-figure earner, and he is like he's like the simplest man. Like the things that he buys are just like cans of paint and canvas and like stuff to build. And it's so interesting to see where our mindset aligns with when you really just understand the principles of like what money can do. And he does it to help benefit himself, his family, his community. And I've seen that across the board, but is it at the same time, does that mean that you can't you can't enjoy luxuries? Like everybody has their thing that they enjoy. I like watches, some people like cars, some people like clothes. Like there's nothing wrong. And I hate demonizing. Like I hate when I see like, oh, they're too flashy. Really ultra successful people don't invest or don't buy things that, don't bring back something for them, whatever the case may be, right? There's a return on investment.
Yeah.
But I'm like, then what's the point of living? Like if you're working your butt off and these are things you enjoy and you're not doing it for the sake of impressing anyone other than just the sheer enjoyment of the thing that you purchased, then there's nothing wrong with that. Stop demonizing people for that. That's just silly.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is the one size fits all mentality, right? Like if it's good for me, it must be good for you. In the coaching game, I have this conversation of like, what can you do for me? I don't know what I can do for you. I have to start to get deep into your limiting beliefs, the obstacles that hold you back, the values that you operate off of. What is your routines and rituals? Like, I don't know that I can change somebody on day one when I'm having a conversation with them until I really get to understand them better. And you know what? What's good for you, Mo, might not be good for the next guy that calls me or the woman I talked to on Thursday. Right. Like, success again is that like loose definition of what makes us feel successful, and what are we willing to sacrifice to get to that level?
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like after you've gained success in business, not to say that you're not in business anymore, but what I'm trying to lead into is this mindset of wanting to help other people and your coaching. Uh-huh. Is that part of like your growth and the mindset and the things that you've developed over the course of your years to help, other people in that regard? And if that's the case, then like what are the fundamentals that you coach on that perhaps people that are listening right now can at least get a taste of, to maybe want to listen a little bit more, learn more about you, and so on?
Yeah, I think the coaching piece really, I was coaching when I was broke. I really learned to coach.
I love that.
I had to learn to coach to be what I consider a decent leader. And I'm still working on it. I'm trying to get better every day at being a good leader. But, back when I was broke and I had to get, 15, 20 people in my battalion to basically, follow me or do what I asked them to do. Yeah, and I coach selfishly because it makes me a better leader. Of course, there's great money. I love help. I really, truly love helping people solve problems. Like when they get through an end of a coaching call and they're like, oh man, that's amazing. Never thought about that. And then it works. It's like, okay, that's a high, obviously. But at the end of the day, I'm helping other people solve problems. It's helping me solve my own problems. We're in business. I'm doing this every day. I'm not just a, coach all the time. I'm a coach to a few, handful of business owners. And then I have to coach my whole team. I have to be a CEO to a real estate development company. And I have to coach all those people through all their dramas and tribulations and challenges. And, we are constantly evolving as a business. So we have this thing that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's because I want you leveling up constantly. But how can I ask anybody to do that if I'm not doing that? Right. So it's disingenuous for me to say, oh, you need to get better and better and better if I'm not doing that myself. So I think it's this whole holistic thing about coaching that is beneficial to all parties involved. And I'm a true believer in it. I've been investing in it for over a decade now, paying for my own coaches and mentors. And, you're right. You got to find the right people, and the right people to me are the ones that either have decades of coaching experience. Like one of my coaches is a full-time coach, but he's got 75, 80, one-on-one clients. I mean, he's been doing it for 15 years. Or you got skin in the game and you're in business and you're doing it and you're in the, and he was, great at business long before he became a coach. So, if you don't have a little bit of that, walking through the fire, trials and tribulations type of thing, it's really hard to give anybody advice on how to do it yourself.
It is, and it's unfortunate because in this world, I mean, how many? I'm sure you've experienced this, but how many people? Let's call it the online marketing space, because that is such a general term nowadays because there's so many different variances of that, but like that teach you how to make money when they've never made money before, or teach you how to set up a company when they've never really set up a company before.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's the biggest lie.
It's all over.
And it's all over. And whether that be on social media or the internet or courses or masterminds, it doesn't matter. But I think because there's a copious amount of information, it makes things a little bit more challenging. But that's where, and this is my own personal belief, that's where I think podcasting has really come to kind of set the standard, because it allows this dialogue in the long form that gets people the opportunity to learn from people like yourself, to dive a little bit deeper and then truly make a decision based off of fact and perception versus just perception and idealism, in my opinion. So I appreciate people like you who actually have done the thing that they're teaching about. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that just to go along that, and not to be negative, but I think that's one of the biggest challenges is so many folks that are just concentrating on selling the product without knowing what the product is, like really trying to understand what the prospect needs and not just blanket market to folks. I mean, we can go down that road forever. I think the challenge, like you said, is knowing what you're doing first and foremost, and then having some value to bring to the table, and trying to keep your ego out of it. I think that's one of the toughest parts, right? Is thinking that you know the answer without really getting deep into the questions.
Yeah, for sure. How do you have any children?
I do. I have two. I have a 10 and a 13-year-old little girl. Two.
Oh,
10 and 13.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Girls will change your life.
Oh, I tell it to everybody.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Let me ask you this. How there's this concept of like work-life balance, which I'm not a big fan of. I think it's misleading. Yeah. I would love your take on it. How are you able to do everything that you're doing professionally, all the while being a present father and husband? Yeah,
you had brought up earlier, like, what are the coaching tactics that I teach, right? No, not one. Yeah. I call it the 5 roads to victory. There's 5 things that we have to master as business owners, quote unquote successful entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them. One of those things that you're getting at is what we call controlling the clock, right? And it really breaks down to this. There's only what we call the rule of 168, Mo, right? Like every one of us on earth has the rule of 168. Well, I don't care if you're Oprah or Elon Musk, or plug in your favorite entrepreneur that you look up to, Ed Milet. Ed talks about this all the time, right? But we all have 168 hours in a week. And so we have to learn to control the clock. Time is way, way more valuable than money. It takes a long time for most entrepreneurs to figure that out, because what are we doing? We're chasing money. What we should be doing is chasing time and getting better at utilizing it, because then the money comes, right? So we focus on, in my little ecosystem, we focus on 2 things: high gain activities and high income activities. And they're really one for one. So, if you're going to spend an hour, writing a sales message or having sales calls or, making offers on projects or whatever it is that you do that's a high income activity, make sure you have a high gain activity next to that. Could be a date with your wife, could be taking your kids to a soccer game. My Mondays, I generally start out pretty slow in the week to get myself organized. I spent the majority of my day today with my 10-year-old daughter. I mean, she had a half day. I dropped her off to school. I picked her up from school. I took her to lunch. I hung out on the couch and messed around with her for a couple hours after lunch. And that was my day. But I consider that a very productive day, because how many times am I going to be able to spend half a day with my 10-year-old just hanging around, talking, asking her what's going on? She's excited for Christmas, all that kind of good stuff. So, to me, that's just as important as being in a boardroom and making high-level decisions. The important part is that we map those things out. that they get scheduled, because what gets scheduled gets done. So again, I don't care if it's a book report or offers on property or time with your wife. You got to get it on the calendar. And so a lot of people think that like time freedom is the ability to just drop what you're doing and go to and hang out on the beach for 4 days and drink margaritas. And you always joke about it because true high level performers couldn't sit still for 4 days on the beach drinking Mai Tais, right? Like we'd have to find
right.
something to do. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go to Mexico next month for 5 days, have all the fun I want to have, bring my family, bring my kids, but also host an event there for other entrepreneurs where we can not only work, but we can play. So I think there's got to be a balance where you're doing both, but you got to make sure that you're taking care of your relationships and you're taking care of your finances along the way.
I absolutely love that. Couldn't agree with you more, which kind of leads me to my next question, but I do want to just touch on a couple of things that you mentioned, which was having the availability and knowing that you don't always get to have the opportunity to spend a half a day with your daughter.
Yeah.
And I think being mindful of something like that. And I understand people are listening right now, well, hey, I work for somebody, I have a 9 to 5, what have you. Understandably so.
Yeah.
And, we all empathize and we understand. But I think the concept is, which again is going to lead me to my question, being present versus just being around are two very different things. And I'd love to hear your insight on that. It's something that I have discussed quite a bit. It's one of my things that I personally experienced. I have found that 10 to 15 minutes of truly being present with my child, with my daughters, rather than a half a day just being around on my phone, responding to emails, taking calls, making dinner or whatever, are two entirely different things.
Yeah. Listen, you're spot on. Couple tools and tricks that we use for that is, number one, make sure you have actual guidelines. What are the guidelines by which you operate? For some folks, like my business partner, for example, I can't text him at 6:30 at night. Like his phone's off. He goes home, turns his phone off, sits down for dinner, puts it back on in the morning. Literally can't get a hold of him. My wife and I have an agreement. We don't talk about business after 7 p.m. She helps me run some real estate properties and things like that. And it's like, I don't want to hear about a tenant's problems at 7:45 because I guess what? I won't sleep. I'll think about it all night long. I can't solve it right now.
So are these non-negotiables?
These are just non-negotiables. Like if somebody she says, oh, I forgot to tell you, I'll be like, write it down and tell me in the morning. But,
wow.
We just don't discuss it. We just don't. Right. But there's also some other non-negotiables. Like we do two date nights a month. 2 date nights where the phone does not come out. We go somewhere. I don't care if it's for pizza or for a steak or something fancy or something simple, but we spend 2 nights a month with each other. And primarily it's me asking her questions about what's going on in her life and her giving me, the rundown of, what's happening. With our kids, it's the same thing. It's funny you mentioned the 15 minutes, Mel, because I used to have this thing that we would do. Our kids are a little bit too old for it now, but we used to call it Fab Five. Each night, I did this until they were probably 8, 9 years old. I would spend 5 timed minutes. I know it sounds crazy to be timed, but you get to focus it. And they run the play. So you hit the timer and it's like, we got Fab Five. We'll do whatever you want. You run the play. And the girls would pull out their dolls and they would be like, you be this thing and I'll be that thing. And we sit there and play. And of course, it would run over sometimes. But having those 5 focused minutes was more impactful than 3 hours of them on their iPad while I'm making dinner and they're not paying attention and they're zoned out. It's one-on-one for 5 minutes. And I think people, my coach says this, he says, people that say they don't have time either have a values or a conflict, right? Like basically it's them deciding that they don't have the time. When we decide that we have the time, we make the time. Like, what is 5 minutes? Most people probably watch 5 minutes of reels every hour. But you can spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes with your daughter. So it's a matter of whether or not you are keeping that time as important or you claim that it's not important, because we all have the same amount of time. Like how does Elon Musk run 7 different multi-billion-dollar companies? He controls his time. Now, a lot of people could argue they don't want to be him. He works too much. He doesn't even know his kids. He doesn't see, whatever. I don't know, but at the end of the day, there's a trade-off, and I think if you're focused on the important stuff, you'll get more out of life.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually love that reference, because that's the one thing that people always throw in. Like, I don't want to work that much. But the point of it is that you focus on the fact that he's able to leverage and deploy the things of importance to him.
Yeah.
And whatever that is. So you can do the same thing. Like if he can run, like you said, 7 multi-billion-dollar companies,
Yeah.
he's in control of his time. Well, you can control your time to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day, so I love that. I absolutely love that. And that's such a great way of representing that mindset, because I really think it's a mindset. I don't think it's something that you just automatically like, oh, I'm going to do this. Like, no, you're gonna have to kind of get in the practice of things and understand that perspective. I have one last question before we kind of dive into switch gears.
Yeah.
What in your opinion, if someone is in a pit right now, what would you tell them?
A pit, as in like depression, like they don't know.
Not necessarily depression, more of like I don't know what to do right now. Like I'm stuck and I need to get out of this thing and I need to climb back up.
Yeah. So it starts with this, and I have this term. We always say simple is not easy, right, Mel? Like simple is not easy. Like a lot of times the simple answer. Look, it's very simple to lose weight. You either have to burn more calories or ingest less calories. You're going to lose more weight, right? That's a simple process. Is it easy? Hell no. Most of us struggle with our weight our entire adult lives, right? Yeah. So the reality of it is when we're talking about someone who's stuck, it's a question of whether or not that they're being honest with themselves. And so what I'd like to ask my clients a lot of times, as simple as it sounds, is what do you want? What do you want? And be honest with the answer. Because so many folks can't answer that question. They're stuck on what they want. I'm not sure what I want. That's bullshit. You know what you want. You're afraid to say it. Because what you want might involve, relationships being broken up, or new relationships being created, or some uncomfortable change to happen, or a difficult phone call, right? So a lot of times we avoid what we want because we're afraid of the consequences of doing the thing that we need to do to get it done. And so the very simple question is, what do you really want? And most people will put these limiting beliefs in front of them and they'll say, well, I'm not smart enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not educated enough. I don't have the financial backing. I don't have the wherewithal. I don't have the means. And these are all limiting beliefs. So what's keeping people stuck is their ability to overcome the limiting belief and believe that they can have what they want.
Do you think that, do you think it's just paralysis of fear that causes this limiting belief, or is it the limiting belief that gives a paralysis?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of both, right? But it starts with limiting belief, right? I have to believe it, then I can overcome the fear. Because fear only comes in 3 modalities. Fear says success is for other people, right? If I try, I could fail. Or if I try, I might get embarrassed. Those are really, when you boil it down, the only 3 ways that fear comes into your life. So that limiting belief is, I might be more comfortable here. Let's just be stuck here. Because if I tried, one of those 3 things could happen. And I'm afraid of the outcome of that happening. And that's
even if the outcome is exactly what you want.
Exactly.
That's, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. So it's these beliefs that are keeping us structured. Tony Robbins has a great quote. He says, the strongest force in the human personality is the need to be consistent with how we define ourselves. Like, in other words, we get stuck in our role, in our story, in our identity. And we don't believe that we can be another role. We don't believe that we could go from single family development to self-storage development. We don't believe we can go from uneducated to a master's degree. We don't believe we can go from, whatever baseline boot camp to a general. We don't believe we can do it. So therefore it doesn't happen. So again, we have to be willing to redefine what we believe in order to get a different outcome.
I really hope whoever is listening right now, which are a lot of you, didn't let that last thing that Joe just said go over your head, because that is so powerful, man. That is so powerful. I appreciate you sharing that with everyone and with me, because like I'm learning as everybody else is learning. So it's the one thing, like I've always said, like, man, if I just could get a grasp of this, I'd be unstoppable in the things that I want to pursue.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. All of us would be. I mean, the truth is, we would all be billionaires if we didn't have limiting mindset and limiting beliefs. It's just the truth.
Oh, yeah. Cool, man. Well, I think a lot of people would benefit. I'm not sure if you work with, just individuals, or do you work with career executives, entrepreneurs, business owners? Like, who do you work with, and how can they work with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a majority of a very small handful of one-on-one clients I work with on the coaching side. I mean, folks who want to get involved in like real estate development, commercial real estate, things like that. We have mastermind groups for that as well.
Wonderful.
But yeah, they can find us on legacybuilder.coach. I think joeevangelisti.com still forwards to legacybuilder.coach. Really, I tell people it's not like we meet tomorrow and we start working together. I really like to put people in my atmosphere, my tribe. I'm going to put you in some group that might help you or help you direct you to the right place that's a good fit for you. If it's one-on-one coaching, that's great, but it's not always that one-to-one. Usually it's I help you work something through, and then you figure out if you need us that later on.
And so, and I'm sure that with any program that people get involved with, there's definitely a personal development component to that.
Every piece of it. That's the thing. People think that again, I said at the beginning, you want more money. It's a lot of times we have to become the people who are worthy of that money. Money comes and goes, and it's really attracted to those who control it, the best. So when you become a great leader, all of a sudden money starts to follow.
Yeah, it's that desired outcome. It's like versus just chasing your tail over and over again.
Absolutely.
Man, this has been phenomenal, Joe. I've learned so much. I'd love to stay in touch. I will tag you in all of these clips that we'll be producing, as well as the long form content. Is there anything specific that you would love to share with the audience, and just to give you some insight? 24, 25 to about 36 years old, predominantly male, a little over 68%.
Yeah, and my old mentor used to say the art is in the start. I know this sounds silly. Again, simple ain't easy. You just put one foot in front of the other. Don't wake up. I can't tell you, Mo, how many clients I have. They're in their 50s, and they come to me because they're like, Joe, the last 30 years went by in a snap, and I don't feel like I accomplished anything. Or I don't feel like I accomplished what I could have accomplished had I taken the necessary action earlier on. So that's not to say if you're in your 40s and 50s that you don't have room left to make it happen, because a lot of people have come up with crazy success in less than 5 or 10 years. But the reality of it is, if you're in your demographic, 26, 36, just take action, man. Don't live your life and wake up old and broke and wonder why you didn't, take that chance, because, time is the most valuable asset we have.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. That's inspiring. And I always look at inspiration as like the what do you call it? The igniter, but then you've got to continue with habits and discipline in order to keep going. Otherwise, it's like you could be motivated all you want, but it's like an emotion. It's fleeting. So,
Absolutely.
I so appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Sweet, man. Well, this was awesome.